Does Donald Trump have PTSD? I'm not being flippant, although I know many on the right probably will think that I am being. There is some evidence that points towards that. And by the way, it's not just me making this case, and it's not just people who don't want him to become president. It is becoming a more and more common talking point among his advisors and campaign workers as they look at what he has done in the weeks since he narrowly avoided death during that attempted assassination just a few weeks ago. And so we're gonna get into the compelling evidence and we're gonna get to some of the quotes from his aides. But at the very least, we should acknowledge that he is in what appears to be an inescapable sort of like political, mental, and emotional death spiral. And some of the lowlights of that I'm sure you're familiar with include the NABJ, she became a black person debacle, one of the worst public appearances by a candidate that I can remember. It was in the immediate aftermath of that. And the Georgia rally where he went on a 10-minute rant against Brian Kemp, who is objectively more popular in Georgia than Donald Trump is. And then he doubled down on that after people told him it was a terrible idea. The wishful thinking of that Biden is going to like storm the DNC and become the candidate. Like he has this future he thought would happen that's not now, and he can't seem to get past it. And then she AI'd it, his emotional lacking of capacity to admit that right now Harris is more popular than him and has more enthusiasm among her supporters. And so those of you are the things that maybe could be used as evidence, but let's go to what his people are saying. Republican donors and Trump campaign officials are struggling to understand why Trump seems to be sabotaging his own candidacy. One theory, according to sources, and this is to Vanity Fair, is that Trump has been experiencing trauma from his near-death experience following the assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania. This is a Republican close to the campaign saying he's been watching that 7-second clip of how close he was to getting shot right in the head over and over and over again. He may actually legit have PTSD. A campaign official confirmed that the shooting continues to weigh on Trump. Quote, he's been through a lot. And look, we don't know for sure. We don't know if he's being screened in terms of like his mental health or anything. I doubt it considering who he is, but they're not giving any comment. And some people, like if you're a conservative, you might say that you're only doing this to attack him. No, this like pointing out that someone who just narrowly avoided dying might be suffering some sort of PTSD or other emotional issues is not an attack against Donald Trump. I mean, maybe the fact that he and others on the right will literally never on pain of death ever get therapy could be considered an attack, but we're simply trying to understand why these very bizarre things are happening in this race. And so I did a bit of searches into some of the common emotional and psychological responses to near-death experiences, in particular, like what they consider like near misses, things where like you very narrowly avoided dying. It's a thing that happens to people, not always from a bullet, but here are some of the common emotional responses that were cited. A constant preoccupation with the event and imagining what you expected to happen. And so that is a thing that apparently happens, is you are preoccupied with replaying it in your mind. Here's the thing though, most people's near-death experience was not captured on video, but Donald Trump's was. And he's apparently playing it over and over and over again. And we already know at his rallies, he's talking about it over and over and over again, talking about the great chart that saved my life because I turned my head. He's going over it. That's apparently a common emotional response. Detachment from loved ones, inability to relate to others, avoidance of intimacy, impatience, irritability, and withdrawal. Now, look, most of those are gonna be difficult for anyone to diagnose because they seem characteristic of just who he is. But maybe withdrawal, maybe loss of interest in career, hobbies, activities, or social life. He is campaigning not just less than he was 4 years ago, he's campaigning less than he was 2 months ago. And during a time in which he really needs to, and he's being encouraged to. And coming out of this bad experience and coming out of seeing Kamala Harris having these big crowds, one would think that he would want to surround himself with these big rally audiences, and yet he's not really doing it. Now he is going and playing golf, including today, so he doesn't seem to have backed off of that, but he's just not campaigning much when he really should be. Let's see, a sense of not belonging, having nothing in common with family, friends, or colleagues. Again, hard to diagnose with Donald Trump in particular. Changed views of what's important in life or no longer having the same values as those around you. I don't know. Maybe look, he had a big drive to be president. He doesn't seem as driven to be president anymore. Loss of meaning in life, feeling that there doesn't seem to be any future, waiting for it to all be over, a preoccupation with death, suffering, and tragedy, or pessimistic feelings such as what's the point, or a feeling that surviving was a mistake, thinking I shouldn't be here, having feelings of guilt or unworthiness. Now, in this particular case, one might expect that, considering that while he was only scratched, other people were horrendously injured and one man lost his life. It's very easy for that to be lost in this entire conversation. It's why when we've talked about the assassination attempt, I've always tried to center that. Now, it could be that he is feeling guilt, that someone tried to kill him and failed, but took the life of another man who in that moment acted heroically. Again, we don't know, because when he has talked about the event at the RNC, and since he doesn't go into that, and like honestly, I'm sympathetic to him not wanting to talk about that, because that seems really rough psychologically. Feeling not like purposefully, but in some way responsible for a person losing their life. Not responsibility, again, in terms of choice, but it wouldn't have happened if it wasn't him. And so these are some of the things that might be sort of floating around out there. And look, we have a couple of psychologists who come on the show from time to time. I think that we should reach out to them. We've had them on previously to talk about the diagnosis that some have made of him as him potentially having some serious mental conditions. But now we have this big event, possibly a trigger for the sorts of things that could be leading him to no longer be waging a successful or vigorous or even serious campaign. And so we're gonna see about having them come on. When you click the join button and become a tier 2 member, you get access to all of our weekly top 10 lists. What are you waiting for?